Today we're speaking with David Meerman Scott, marketing and sales strategy expert and best-selling author of several books including The New Rules of Marketing and PR, where he explains how to use social media, online video, mobile apps, blogs, news releases, and viral marketing to reach potential buyers directly, along with Worldwide Rave, which provides insight on how to create triggers that get millions to spread your ideas and share your stories, along with his other book, Real-Time Marketing and PR and Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead, which was written with HubSpot CEO Brian Halligan, and also The New Rules of Sales and Service, with insight on how to use agile selling, real-time customer engagement, big data content, and storytelling to grow your business. He's a well-known speaker, and he's presented at numerous conferences like National Healthcare Marketing Summit and Realtors Conference, along with working with several organizations including PwC, Ford, Google, SAP, the United States Marine Corps, and many others. David, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
So in your book, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, you've discussed how many apply the wrong mindset and rely on the old playbook or the old mentality of advertising. Could you elaborate on this and what you think is the right approach?
Yeah, sure. So, well, first of all, I'm not necessarily saying it's the right approach, because if the techniques you're using today are working, that's great. But the vast majority of people I speak with tell me that the old rules are not working so well anymore. So the old rules are, this is basically prior to the ability to reach people directly. The old rules were that you had to spend a whole lot of money to advertise on magazines, radio, television, newspapers, on billboards, to buy direct mail lists and send direct mail out and things like that. You also had the option of spending a lot of money in a public relations agency to get your ink in the media, or having an army of salespeople to knock on doors or make cold calls. Now, again, if all of those things are working for you, that's great. Keep doing them. However, the ways that people buy have significantly changed. And what's changed is that we have the web now. So people have the ability to do searches on Google to find answers to problems. They have the ability to reach out to their friends and colleagues and family members through social networks to solve problems. And those ways of making buying decisions mean that you have to change the way that you're doing business if you want to reach those particular buyers. So the whole ideas of the new rules are that you create the kind of content that will attract people, that you're active in the social networks that people are active in so that you're going to reach them, that you're engaged in real-time communications, reaching people when the moment is right. And that generally works great for lots of people. So I call those the new rules, as opposed to what we used to do in the past before the ability to reach people through the web.
Yeah, you have to change with the times, right?
Yeah, well, the main reason you have to change with the times is because that's what buyers have done. I mean, the way that buyers make decisions is they're going to those search engines, they're going to those social networks. So if you want to reach them and align the way you're selling and marketing with the ways that people are buying, then you do have to make those changes.
In the past, you've talked about publishing information to meet the needs of the people you're trying to reach and attracting them through content. While most larger corporations and businesses understand this, would you mind clarifying for SMBs and share your thoughts on this, along with content strategy and how it can help to reach consumers to grow a business?
Yes, of course. So what I like to look at is what I call buyer personas. Buyer personas are how you understand the market that you're trying to reach. So what I've noticed is that many organizations, when they get started with this idea of creating content to reach buyers, tend to spend way too much effort talking about themselves and talking about their products and services. So And that's not so effective anymore, because that's really like advertising your products and services. What works better is to deeply understand the buyers that you're trying to reach. And the only way you can do that is if you really truly do the research to understand them. And by that, I mean you actually interview potential buyers. I call them buyer personas. And so if you are very clear in understanding those different personas, then you're able to create the sort of content that will be interesting to them. So let me give you an example. So the vast majority of hotels in the world generally create the content on their website which is just about their hotel property. So it has pictures of the bedrooms, it has pictures of the restaurant and the swimming pools and whatnot, but it doesn't really address the needs of the buyers. But if you think about what a hotel is doing, it's providing very different services for different buyers. So for example, the independent business traveler who's making a decision to travel to, for example, Boston, will make a decision based on their individual needs. Perhaps they want to have a great health facility to work out in. You've also got a corporate travel manager of a company located in the Boston area, for example, Fidelity Investments, who has lots and lots of people come through the city of Boston, and they're making the decision for thousands of hotel room nights per year, and that's a very different buyer persona. Or how about a family planning to come to Boston for vacation? Also a very different buyer persona. Or a company or organization that's planning an event, and they might have it at a hotel in Boston, also a very different buyer persona. Or how about a couple planning on getting married, and they want to have a wedding reception in a hotel? Another very different buyer persona. So the idea of how you create great content for an organization of any size. It could be a tiny organization of 1 or 2 employees all the way up to any size organization. So this could be an independent hotel or a hotel chain, is that if you understand deeply those individual buyer personas, you create content for each one of them. So for example, if you were trying to attract people who might want to use your hotel for a wedding reception, perhaps you could create a wedding blog. You could call it the Boston Wedding Blog, and that would allow you to create the sort of content that would attract brides and grooms as they're planning their wedding. And then they might say, well, shoot, this hotel seems pretty cool. They're educating and informing me about having a wedding in Boston. Maybe I should think about having my wedding at their hotel.
Sounds like it's important to be a resource, not just a brochure.
That's a really good way to put it. That's exactly right. So rather than just talking about your own products and services, you instead anticipate and understand deeply the problems that your buyers face. You understand the language that those buyers use, the actual words and phrases they use, and that helps you to better be able to sell to them.
If you're a business that wants to stand out in a local market, I was wondering what you might suggest. And to provide more context, let's say it's a restaurant or retail shop, or perhaps a service-driven business like a plumber, and they're based in Boston. What strategies would you suggest for small business, local marketing, and customer acquisition?
So the first thing that's very important is to make sure that you're properly registered with Google. And by that I mean that you have claimed your business on Google Local. That's really important. That all of the details about your business is up to date. Your phone number, your address, photographs about your business, your store hours if you have a physical store. All of that kind of information is really valuable. The reason that Google Local is incredibly valuable is because that's the part of the Google search engine that people will find if they're searching from the local market. So if you happen to be in California and you do a search for plumbers, you're not going to get a plumber located in Boston. But if you're in Boston and you do a search for plumbers, you want to make sure if you are that plumber that your business is going to be surfaced. The second thing that's really important is to then think about how you can create information that the search engines will like. So information about, for example, as we're recording this right now, it's incredibly cold in Boston. It has not gone above 20 degrees Fahrenheit in Boston for the last 4 days or 5 days, I think, and this weather is going to continue. So right now we're in this terrible cold snap, and it's causing all sorts of problems with plumbing all over Boston. So if you had written some content or created a video about what to do in very cold weather to protect your pipes, perhaps that information would be surfaced as people were doing their research about what to do in such very cold weather. And that's how you can make your organization stand out from other plumbers, because there's very few plumbers that are doing that today, very few plumbers that are actually creating the sorts of information that people will find as they're doing research on issues related to plumbing, and they happen to be in Boston. You will get surfaced.
Almost an example of brand jacking, which is the title of another one of David's books.
It's actually newsjacking.
Sorry, newsjacking.
Yeah.
But the way you're talking about it, it's about being timely and delivering the right information to the right audience.
Yeah, and newsjacking is a little bit different. The idea of newsjacking is how can you understand what's going on in the market and then create valuable information at that moment that will be found not only by your potential customers, but also potentially by the media. So while I did mention the idea that we're going through this very cold period right now in Boston, and that a plumber, if they had created content in the past, that might get surfaced, the difference with newsjacking is that you create that content right now, this moment, when it's most needed, and then you push it out using a media that will get found by people as they're looking for something right now. So what that means, if you're a plumber and you wanted to create content around this very cold weather, is there's a number of things you could do. So first of all, you could create a YouTube video. Now what's interesting about YouTube is that YouTube is owned by Google, so frequently that content is indexed and surfaced very a lot by Google. The other thing you could do is you could create a tweet with a hashtag. So the idea of a hashtag is it gets surfaced as people are looking for information on this cold weather and plumbing issues around the cold weather. And I don't know what the hashtag is that you would use, but you could do a little research and find it really quickly. The other thing is you could create a blog post. And the other cool thing about a blog post is that blog posts are indexed instantly by Google. And therefore, if you do a blog post and the title were something like 5 tips for making sure that your pipes don't freeze during this cold weather in Boston, something like that, you get all of those search terms in there. Your content may get surfaced when people are looking for information, and importantly, maybe when reporters are looking for information, people to quote in their stories. They're looking for a plumber to quote. And so that's how you can do this idea of newsjacking. You can also look for local reporters in your marketplace and tag them on a tweet, or even send them through their email to your content, and they may be interested in then writing or broadcasting about you.
Some great tips there. Business has seen a lot of changes in the last decade for finding customers in the customer buying journey. When it comes to getting in front of customers, what was once bought is often now earned. How we buy isn't like it was. In a recent talk you did at Microsoft about marketing to modern customers, you mentioned how consumers with a problem with a problem or purchase intent will often go to search engines to research for content that will help them or speak to their personal network for referrals. But for businesses to address and capitalize on these interests, you've stated not only the need to create content people will find, but also engage in real time with social media. So what do you think it takes to develop a strong content strategy to compete so that you might be able to benefit from additional sharing on social media that's distributed with further reach than just your personal network? And I know you covered some of that in your last answer.
Yeah, no, I think what it really comes down to is this idea of real-time connection. The whole idea of social networking is that the social networks like Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and Snapchat and the others, those are just the tools of being able to communicate. What's really remarkable about social networks is that they allow real-time connection between people. So on Facebook, for example, I can reach people instantly through Facebook, and I can instantly see what they're saying on Facebook. Same thing is true of Twitter. Same thing is true of LinkedIn. So what this has done is it's taken business that used to be focused on a sort of a campaign mentality of I'm going to create information when I'm ready to being very different. Now it's focused around being creating information when the buyer is ready. So if somebody is interested in doing business with you and they reach out to you and send you a request, you need to respond right away because perhaps they've sent that request to other people as well. For example, I recently had to move my office I'm again in the Boston area, so I reached out to 3 different moving companies that I found through Google, and I gave them a request of how much it was going to cost to move my office. I gave them an indication of how much stuff I had to be moved and some pictures of my office, and the first company got back to me in 2 hours with a detailed price quote. The second company got back to me in 6 hours, and they only left a voicemail and then asked me to respond to them by calling back. And then the third company got back to me 24 hours later with a price quote, and their price quote was cheaper than the first. But I went with the first company, the company that got back to me most quickly, because I figured they were the company that was going to be doing the business better for me. They were the one that was going to get to my office on time and do the work as they promised. So this whole idea of instant communications is really important in today's world, and that's really what's changed with this idea of real-time content, is that social media is not just about a new way to communicate, it's about a way to communicate instantly, and that's what's different.
How do you view online reviews in terms of importance for businesses, and what do you believe helps to create more digital word-of-mouth referrals like this?
Online reviews are important for most businesses. In my business, for example, I do a number of things, but as you mentioned at the top, I write books. And I've got 10 books so far, and my books are in 29 different languages. So I've got tons of people who have reviewed my books in all sorts of different places. For example, there's well over 1,000 reviews of my books on Amazon. And those are very important in helping to sell books. So I think that number one, you have to make sure that you're actually creating a great product, whatever your product is, whether you have a restaurant or you're a hairdresser or you're a landscaper, whatever it is, you have to have a great product. And then secondly, when you do have a great product and you have a customer who likes it, see if they would be willing to write a review. A lot of people don't even think about it. And so sometimes if you just prompt them, hey, it'd be really great if you could write a couple sentences on Yelp, or really great if you could write a couple of sentences on Amazon, or whatever it might be, that can be a good thing. I think that in some cases, people get really concerned about an overly negative review. I actually think that 1 or 2 negative reviews, if they're thoughtful, are not really a bad thing, because it shows that real people have written those reviews. I think that when an organization has dozens and dozens of glowing positive reviews that seem fake, many times they are fake. But when an organization has reviews that seem like they've been written by real people, and maybe there's a couple of reviews that aren't quite as positive, that seems more real to people, and they're more willing to want to buy a product or service that might be that might have that kind of set of reviews. So yeah, reviews are very, very important, especially for local products.
Absolutely. And a number of studies also mention that companies which respond to those types of reviews make a difference too, because of the sentiment in how they respond influences consumer choices as to whether I want to work with this company.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
Well, I wanted to say congrats on making the shortlist for Oxford Dictionary's Word of the Year shortlist for the term newsjacking, which I believe you came up with, and then I thought it was far better than the final choice of Youthquake.
Yeah, I would tend to agree, but what can I say? I'm just happy to make the short list, and it's kind of amazing that, an idea that I pioneered and started to promote only 5-6 short years ago has taken off and gathered so much interest that now it's not only listed in the dictionary but was shortlisted for the Word of the Year.
Yeah, that's great. Kudos. Any thoughts or plans for the year ahead to share?
I am focused on looking to see where we're going in the future, and I'm always doing that. I'm always looking to where we're going in the future, and I think what I'm looking at as being very interesting to me personally is that the idea of telling the truth in business is even more important than it's ever been. With all the different scandals that are going on in the world, with all of the polarizing politics, certainly in the United States, but I think in other places in the world, with companies constantly focused on how they could deal with their scandals that they're faced, with people who are being put forward as engaging in sexual harassment again and again and again. I think these things are all pointing to the idea that if you're honest in your work and truthful in your work, that's a competitive advantage.
Well, David, thank you so much for taking the time today. It was great speaking with you.
My pleasure, Mark. Thanks a lot.
For more insight, be sure to visit his website at davidmeermanscott.com, where you can find links to his books, along with a number of other resources and his blog.